So I decided to make a video on just overclocking and 3D Mark in general, and this will be more of a review and overclocking process for the Powercolor Red Devil 6950 XT. It also applies to the 6900 XT. It's the same exact process. So let's get started. So without shaking the camera too much, as I did get some negative feedback on that with the last video, we have a 6950 XT here, and we have the EK Waterblocks Vector RD water block on it. Nothing special, though it does have liquid metal instead of thermal paste, and I did add some thermal paste to the pads and pretty much all contact surfaces, and seems to be working pretty well. The computer can run the outdoor radiator, and right now I have a switch, and it's switched off so that there's no fans blowing. And I use this to kind of like a thermostat in a car. I make it get up to temp, so basically idle temp or heat soak. So the water temp's at 28 degrees Celsius, and that'll quickly drop down to 13 or 14 in a second, because currently it's rainy outside and it's 39 degrees. Alright, so the computer's restarting. I just turned the outdoor radiator on, which you can kind of hear has a bit more bass to its sound than the regular fans. And just for note, we're using an Asus Z690 motherboard. I think it's the ROG Gaming Strix. Pretty good motherboard. It's been the most successful motherboard that I've used so far. Quite flexible with memory. We're running a set of 6800 sticks from G-Skill. And I could go over that if you guys want. But anyways, the machine's on its way up. I just wanted to show the most important part of getting your AMD graphics card to cooperate with you and get good numbers. So I have this whole folder called More Power Tool, or MPT. This is an application you'll need. It's called More Power Tool. So once you have the application, the process, as you might have seen with some other videos, is you get GPU-Z, and then you have this button up here right next to UEFI. So you do Save BIOS, you do Save to File, and then I've done this so many times I've just created a folder, but you save it in here. As you can see, I already have a whole bunch of Navi 21s. Do note, this is very important. Every time you update your AMD drivers, you'll have to do this over again. So this is not a true flash. It's not actually flashing the graphics card's BIOS, so to speak. I believe it flashes like the specific ID, or like it's driver related. It's basically flashing the driver to do things. But anyways, you save it, and then with More Power Tool, you go down here to the drop down, you select your graphics card. Now, I've seen this show two graphics cards at the same time, depending on the card. Like my 6900 would do that depending on which BIOS switch you have it switched to. So like there's the silent version, and then there's the OC. And right out of the box, it's actually stuck with the OC option. But this is the 6950 XT. Nothing special done to the actual physical board. Select the graphics card, and then it should show up like this. But you may need to, if this is your first time doing this, you'll select the graphics card and then you'll hit load, and then we're already in the MPT, but I have a whole bunch of them, and I should name these better. But you select the one that's Navi 21. That's what it should be, or whatever you named it. But you'd select it, and then you come to this menu, and just to show you what I'm going off of, this is what I actually found after pretty much a whole entire year of researching how to flash this to get really good 3D Mark, or just really good performance in general, because the videos that I've seen on the internet are very limited as far as like what they do. All they really do here, to show you, 90% of the videos, they just go into power and they just up this. Usually they do like 400 watts. Don't mind that it says 1200 watts. That's not important right now. And then usually you do SoC 65. But that's all most people do, and then they'll hit write SPPD and then successfully add, and then you restart, and then it's all flashed and good. I did a little bit different stuff. The thing that I found a long time ago is this article, and let me see. There we go zoom. So this is the only article slash like screenshot that I've seen that has gotten me this far in 3D Mark, is this V-min low high. So this is all you actually need to do to flash your card and get pretty much 95% of what I've already done so far with this card. And maybe your card clocks a bit better than mine. Might not be a perfect bin. But basically in that power, so this is a bit older image, but you go to the same power tab, which I'll pull up. So you go to power, and it's this area right here. I have mine set to 1.35 volts. I think factory 6950 XT is I think 1200. And like the 6900 XT was 1175, and like I think AMD factory is 1150 for the 6900 XT. But anyways, this is as high as the AMD driver will actually allow you to boot with, is 1350. And just like any other overclock, the higher the voltage, the greater the power draw. Even if it's the same clocks, it's just a piece of hardware. It doesn't care what your clocks are. If you put the voltage like this and you set the amp limit to pretty much unlimited, it's gonna pull full tilt. So be wary. I would only suggest these things on a graphics card that's water cooled and water cooled well. And so let's get to the next point. I'm gonna simulate restarting by making changes. But yeah, basically that's all you have to do to flash your card, and I would say that's the safest thing to do without touching the other settings, because I've been in settings hell in here, and the worst part is if you don't get the settings right, the computer will start without graphics. Like, you will have no display, so you'll have to like force the computer to crash a couple times in order to get to safe mode, and then you can open up more power tool to change that if you really quote unquote flash the wrong stuff into the BIOS. But yeah, that's that. There's a whole bunch of other settings that I've been experimenting with, but they don't seem to have any true effectiveness. Like, the one that I'm messing around with right now is the power limit changer. So like, I changed it to 50%, and it has to be at least 30% boost at all times. And what that ends up being is just like, I'm using MSI Afterburner. The power limit now is not limited to 20% out of the factory, and I think for the 6900 XT it's 10%. But just FYI, you can actually change that power limit. I don't know if it's actually done anything. I assume it is, because I don't think I'd be able to get the Port Royal world record 4 times in a row otherwise, because I don't remember altering that power limit percentage thing before. But yeah, I'm going to restart the machine. We're already down to 14 degrees Celsius water temp, and fans are barely on. It's just, as long as there's little to medium airflow, it'll cool it down pretty good. Alright, so we are now at step 2. So if you've already finished your more power tool, I'll just quickly go over it again, because I might have brushed over some things a bit too quickly. But so these are the important parts. So make sure that you change this from the factory default that's already on there. Usually it's, if you have a 6900 XT, it'll be like 1150 or 1175 depending on the manufacturer. I've run anything between 1350 and 1250 for the entire life of the 6900 XT and the 6950 XT. I've never had an issue. In fact, when you max out the voltage, the computer is just straight up less likely to crash to begin with. So it's very reliable, and with my experience, the last 15 years of overclocking experience, reliability is the key factor in making decisions. And you could have a crazy overclock, but if you can't really run it in a lot of scenarios, then what's the real purpose of that overclock? So once you've already increased this to like, if you're doing air cooled, I would suggest like 1250 is still manageable as long as the fan curve is strong enough. But you would set this to 1250 or 1350, 1300, something in between there, depending on your cooling capability. And then you make sure you put that number in the minimum portion for SoC and GFX and the high portion, so that basically we're telling the card to just force that voltage at all times, and that'll prevent you from crashing when it gets under load and the voltage sags. It's making sure that the voltage is being pushed at all times and there's no dynamic voltage clocks or anything like that. And that's a good rule of thumb if you're trying to break world records. Just get rid of all the bottlenecks and things that are dynamic. Make it a static clock. And that's the biggest trouble with modern graphics cards is that they have all these temperature dependent rules and dynamic clock settings, and a lot of them are right in the BIOS or the firmware, I guess. So like it's not stuff that you can easily disable. But my settings currently for this graphics card are as close to a static clock that I can do with my own experience. I've seen a lot of 3D Mark results where, here, let me just pull up 3D Mark results. I've seen a lot of 3D Mark results where they're using the same, I'm just comparing my computer spec, like CPU and graphics card, to all the other ones. So 6950 XT, and let's just do time spy because time spy is a good example of the clock sag thing. So let me see if I can see that there. Oh my god. Okay. So GPU count 1. So if we look at the top dogs here, we got Skullbringer here. He has a clock. He somehow managed 3 gigahertz, which is very impressive. And as you can see, which this is the thing I don't know how to do, unfortunately, and I wish I knew how to do it. I'm still in progress on figuring that out. But as you can see, his clock is set to 3 gigahertz, and his average clock, which means his all the way through both the graphics runs and CPU, or I guess just the 2 graphics card runs, the average clock was 2955. So he has it set pretty much static. There's no sponge, there's no bounce. And like for time spy, my record's world's 28th, and it's not greatest. As you can see, there's a lot of work to be done in the CPU area, which is mostly memory affected. But I ran this run at 2940 megahertz GPU clock, and as you can see, mine will sag quite a bit. It does 2787. Temperatures are all there, and especially with the AMD side, there doesn't seem to be a temperature dependent variable too much. It's mostly just power that it runs off of, if you have your power tool set correctly. But anyways, we'll move on to MSI Afterburner. So that was just a fair warning. The settings that I make, these settings don't disable that sag. So like my graphics card frequency will sag, which I'll show later. But let's get to MSI Afterburner. So this is what I use. You can use a different overclocking utility. You can use the AMD one if you want. Doesn't seem to make a difference. But I have my memory clock set to 2450, and that was after a lot of pain. I used more power tool to increase the voltages on the memory side. That's still a work in progress. Like the screen will go blank if I have the clock set too high. I've had about 4 hours or about 3.5 hours of straight overclocking with no crashes with these settings. So I have GPU clock at 2990, and then I have the memory clock at 2450. And to show you what has always worked for me, and I guess it's my secret sauce, is you go to the curve editor. As you can see, there's this like voltage curve here. Disregard that. We don't care about that. We're forcing constant voltage. And do note with the 6950 XT, at least for me, I'm not able to get the voltage to be monitored. So the only way I can do it is if you open up GPU-Z, is the sensor portion. Like right now it says 1325, 1350. This still has a semi-dynamic clock and voltage thing going on when it's like idle. Like there's no graphics, there's no GPU usage, so that's why all these numbers are lazy and tired. But back to the curve. So once you have your clock that you desire set, so like for me it's 2990. So, which is very annoying because it's right there. So that's the end point is set. So the minimum is 2990, and then the maximum is also 2990. and even if you change this voltage portion, it'll just default to this again. So don't worry about the voltage portion. I would always highly suggest to set a static clock like this, and I'll show you why later. So 2990. So just to be safe, to run the Port Royal, I'm just gonna do like 2960, and yes, it is very annoying because you have to do this for both points every time you want to change the frequency. So I did 2960 just so we have some stability for the test. So as you can see, that's 2960, and then we're going to leave the memory alone because memory, just like desktop memory, is very annoying and crashes if you don't get it right. So I'll minimize that, and to show you, I'll keep the on-screen display open. It'll show us all the stats during the benchmark. Alright, so I'm pretty excited about this. We have a new 5th world record. While the GoPro is recording, some ideas came up, like setting the fan curve so that the outdoor radiator's like 3 times as effective. It's pretty loud, and it's blowing quite a bit of air. It's blowing quite a bit of air there. Hopefully I was heard. And it creates this vibration, like it's like a bass noise, but it's coming from like the window itself. Anyways, my room's gonna get super cold very fast. I mean, it's not that cold out, it's 41 degrees, so if we were down to like 35 or 32 degrees, this would be 4 to 8 times more effective. Basically, ever so slight lower temperature outside with ever so higher fan curves and exponential raise. But I'll show you the process that I do when I get a new record, whether or not it's world record. So the last one was me. I did 12,445 this morning, and this goes back to the comment on the first video that I made with this outdoor radiator. If there were to be condensation, it would happen right now, because we're rapidly cooling. We're cooling the GPU super fast, because the fan curve is also controlling the double water pumps. But as you can see, because the outdoor temperature is not super high, it's just hitting a maximum low of 16 degrees and staying there. So basically, with a faster fan curve, I could run a super high demanding thing and just immediately cool down. And I'm actually quite excited to see how this fan curve handles like an actual game, because I want to see when the heat soak happens, if it does happen at all. So that should be pretty exciting. But here's our score, and let me see. Sorry about the make of this video, or at least how I assume it's gonna come out, because I've never recorded actually overclocking and even talking about this stuff, because a lot of people are secretive. But basically, the way I save my records for my personal use, I hit compare result online, and then this brings up detailed information about the benchmark run that you just did, or I just did, I guess. So we got our score up here, better than 75%. Wait, why is my computer so garbage? Oh, might be the okay, that doesn't make sense. How is that a premium gaming PC? Who actually runs double 2080 Ti's? Unless you're just playing some early or mid 2000s games or something. Oh. So anyways, we got our numbers here. Pretty good numbers. Actually, yeah, that's the lowest average temperature I've ever seen. It's 35 degrees Celsius average running temperature. That's 600 watts. High 500 watt average. So I usually put up my MSI Afterburner here. It makes it much easier to remember all your clocks and settings, because you might want to go back to those at some point, or it's just like an experimental. The reason I do it this way is this way I know the memory timing, because I'll have a specific profile for that memory timing in the BIOS, and then I'll save this screenshot. So I'll go back to the last thing I've done. So I think that's 2990 core. We'll get out a superposition 3D Mark, Port Royale, and then we got, let me see, 22455, 2990 core, 2480 mem, and that's 5.5 G skill 6933 39 30. Too many numbers. But we did it. We hit a world record, and we did it on camera for the most part. I mean, it took me 6-7 different runs, mostly failures. But getting that water temp down is critical, I guess. I didn't think there was any room for stability or improvement with the what is it called? I didn't think cooling down the loop would really improve it that much. I thought I was already at the peak, but I guess not. I guess lowering the temperature even slightly improves stability. Who would have thought? Until next time, let me know what you guys want to see next, because I'm more than happy to show anything regarding this computer build, because it gives me great enjoyment, and the fact that it can play games at these ridiculous clocks without crashing is just the cherry on top, I guess.